Even the Freedom Project, when I first started, it was supposed to be a side project because I had other jobs to do. When my friend passed away, that's when I decided to do it full time. I was like, all right, let's go all in. But I went in being very intentional. And I told myself, okay, I'm not going to hire anyone until I know what I'm doing, what the company is, like what exactly are the values, what are the missions that I'm hoping to push. So if you look at the history of the Freedom Project, you see there was so many different things. I used to have people wearing T-Rex costumes walking around the city to talk about, like suicide awareness. I did something called the listening series. I did something. I didn't have a name for it, but it was just basically me just popping up places, giving away free boxes, mental health starter kits. That was just me experimenting. So I told myself, I'm not going to hire anyone until I know what I'm doing. What is this company? Like, what's the goal? Who am I trying to reach? Who are the customers? In my background as an advertiser, I do understand that sometimes we have an idea and we just go and create without doing market research. And as an advertiser, the way that we figure out whether even a product is sellable, just put it out and let people let us know whether they think this product is worth selling.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today, Jeff is interviewing Abraham Sisay. Abraham is the founder and Chief Empathy Officer at the Freedom Project, a multicultural impact creative agency with the goal to make positive change by guiding 1 billion people to mental health breakthroughs. Originally from Gambia in West Africa, Abraham came to America to study accounting and finance at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. You can learn more about Abraham and his work at the Freedom Project at fpmedianetwork.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Abraham.
Abraham, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I think I might be more excited. So we met through Brad Hill. That was a great introduction. And I know now you both are working together at the Freedom Project, but we'll talk about that. But I love your story. I love what you're doing in terms of mental health, using AI and e-learning and entertainment. But let's start with a fun question first. I know you're fairly transparent on your social media and what you do in public appearances, but even people that know you fairly well, what one thing would surprise them about you?
So I used to be a b-boy, so basically a break dancer. I don't think a lot of people know. I used to be those guys that would do those head spins and back flips. Yeah, I lived in Burbank, California for a bit, and that was how I was making money. I was living in my car, so so I was dancing every day for 10 hours. I was really in shape though. So I did that for almost a year before I could get back on my feet and got a place to live. So yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
So that's why every now and then I wear things like this made mob, because they're all like hip hop dance.
Yeah. I noticed that shirt. It was very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. You were born in Africa, right? Gambia?
Yeah, Gambia. It's a very, very tiny island. So a lot of people don't know, I've never heard of it. Sometimes most people would say, is it Zambia? It's like, no, Gambia. They're two different countries in Africa.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, what was fun for you growing up there?
I played soccer, so that has always been a very good memory. Because I played with, like kids that I, like grew up with. But I also came from a very massive family. So my grandpa has like 3 wives and he has 50 plus kids. I just say 50 plus because I stopped counting.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so the house, we had this massive compound. The whole family lives in the one house. So it was always very chaotic, very dysfunctional, but we've always had some really, really good memories, just having so many different aunties and uncles that I'm actually older than them because my parents were still having kids while my
Right.
parents were having kids, which was very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife, Robin, will not let me have more than one wife. So she's it.
Hey,
Yeah. But
yeah,
I mean,
well, good for you because it's very chaotic.
I'm sure. Well, it's safe to say you're the first guest that had a grandfather with more than one wife. So that's
Yeah, it's not
impressive.
allowed anymore now. He was one of the last people that that had three wives. Like some people have had like five wives. It's very insane.
Yeah.
Because land, most people in Africa have massive lands.
Right.
Especially my family. They kind of came from like a royal descent from the Mansa Musa tribe. So most of them all have like really big lands. So that's why on my LinkedIn page, at some point I did put like I'm the modern day Mansa Musa because my grandparents always told me stories about him and
Right.
how he conquered Mali and traveled across, and he
Wow.
was apparently he was worth like $600 billion in today's currency.
Jeez.
One of the richest men alive.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's why he's like lineage. Everyone has like two, three wives. It's just insane.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hmm.
So anything else besides soccer was fun for you growing up?
Well, let me see. I mean, I was very close with my siblings because, with that big of a family, they were my immediate family. Like growing up, me and my older brother and my sisters, it's like eight of us combined. So we felt like we had this little unit inside the whole family. Eventually, my dad kind of separated and had his own thing. But before that, we were so close because we were against this massive uncles and aunties. So, just that bond of having siblings that you can do everything with. So I genuinely miss that because now that I'm in the US, I kind of just packed and just left and came here by myself with no plan whatsoever. Or the only thing I knew that I was going to school to study finance, but I do miss that. So back then, just that relationship with the siblings and especially my sister after me, even though we always just like roast each other, but she's like one of my favorite person that I can talk to even today when I'm going through stuff. She's the person that I will call, and she always has all the best advice ever. So yeah, so I do miss that that relationship that I had with all eight of them. So
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So tell me about, well, growing up,
Hmm.
did you have, I mean, you knew you wanted to study
Hmm.
finance.
Hmm.
Do you had aspirations of being like a CFO, or what was your kind of aspirations as a child growing up? Probably
Hmm.
playing professional soccer, I'll say, but,
Hmm.
um,
No, yeah. So the reason why I wanted to study finance, it's like a whole long story. I'm gonna try to break it down as we're talking. But I played soccer professionally, and the goal was to eventually go and play pro. But somewhere along the line, I started having panic attacks, and then I could not play soccer the way that I used to, especially between age 11 to 14. So a lot of opportunities, even me getting like scouted by Puma, because Puma had a program in Africa where they would go around and find kids that are really good at sports and then try to scout them quickly and then send them to like different teams across the like the globe. So I had that opportunity at some point and I was a became a Puma athlete. I had the whole Puma jersey, everything.
nice.
And But then I was having panic attacks at whenever we have massive games, and so that opportunity disappeared. And I was like, "Well, what's next?" And I wanted to travel. So I know that my dad always had issues with all of his CFOs and all of his accountants. So I told myself, maybe if I go study accounting, I can come back and help my dad, but at least I'll get to travel and venture and learn new things. And I just saw that soccer was a big thing in the US. So I figured, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can tell my dad, I'm going to go study finance and be your accountant someday or your finance manager or whatever. Because I knew my dad cared about that. So I
Right.
kind of pitched him that, like, hey, send me to go study finance and I'll come back and help you run your business. So, because I'm your son, you would trust me. I'm not going to do anything to steal money from you. But yeah, so today I'm here 11 years later. I still haven't gone back.
Wow.
But yeah.
Phenomenal. And
Hmm.
what brought you, so you came to Kansas City. So what was the tie there?
Yeah, so Kansas City, I don't know, like back then when I decided that I'm gonna come to the US, I didn't know anyone in Kansas City whatsoever. But again, my grandpa has 50 plus kids, so apparently one of them lives there. So when I told my dad that I'm coming to the US, and he said cool, and now it was time to travel, and I remember him telling me, wait, let me just look in the US whether we have family somewhere. So that's how much kids my grandpa had. Like we just
Wow.
had to like figure out which one of his kids are currently in the
Right.
US and where. So I have family everywhere. Like doesn't matter where I go, there's
Right.
gonna be someone who is my family. And then the Mansa Musa, like lineage, they're everywhere. But yeah, so he just told me, all right, stop at Kansas City because I was on my way to Maryland. That was the place that every African kid goes to because like they have a massive, community for Africans there. He told me to stop by, Kansas City and just meet my uncle, and if I like it, I stay there. And at first, I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know who this guy is. Like,
Right.
apparently he's an uncle. But then he like picked me up, and he's like a lot younger, so I felt like we just immediately connected. And then the first night he took me on a tour, like we came to downtown, but because the initial drive, all I saw was just land, and I was like, is this America?
Right.
Like this is not what I was expecting. So I
Right.
was just kind of complaining to him, like,
Yeah.
where are all the buildings? And he was just laughing. He's like, no, everything is downtown. Here you only see is land. And back then the airport was so small. I was so like disappointed when I landed in Kansas City because I even the airport we had in Africa was like two times, probably three times bigger. And Gambia is a very small island.
Right.
So I was surprised that Kansas City. I was like, "What is this place?" I remember calling it Kansas, and people were like, "No, it's Kansas City." So
Right.
that took me a while to like even understand. But
Right.
I just said cool, and I just went with him, and he showed me around the city, and I so surprisingly I saw a bunch of guys at Westport just breakdancing, and then I was like, "Huh, okay, they have breakdancers here. Maybe I'll check this place for a little bit." So I changed my mind to stay in Kansas City instead of going to Maryland, which was a great decision because most of my friends in Maryland, most of them got arrested.
Oh, geez.
Like one of them got shot. So I was like, oh my God. So Kansas City was a good decision for me to stay here. So that's why I've been here, even though I leave every now and then, but I always come back.
So you majored in accounting at UMKC, where you got your degree. I mean, you're so talented in terms of marketing and relationship building and helping others. I mean, did you ever think about, like, I know you wanted to do it, because your dad's business had, poor CFO support over the years, but like, did you ever think of marketing as a major?
No, 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 not at all. Like, so the reason why, in the beginning of this conversation, I talked about living in LA, sorry, in like Burbank, California for a little bit. It's because while I was going to school, I met a band, like a musician, because they saw me dancing again at the streets, at the plaza here, out of all places, because I just enjoyed the dance, and I didn't care. Whenever I hear music, I'll just go and dance. So a guy named AY Young, he's the founder of the Battery Tour. So he saw me and then he like invited me to a few of his shows and I'll open for him dancing on stage with like 600 people in the crowd. Is that when it comes to dancing, I didn't care. I'll just get up there and just do it. And he basically like, he like convinced me to join him on his company, which is called Battery Tour. But basically he like created this solar powered box and he was using music to pitch the product. So basically, he would do street shows and have this massive set without no plugs. And people are like, well, how are you powering this? He's like, I'm glad you asked. This is the Battery Tour and we're currently fundraising. So we did that. He convinced me to like follow him and I said, sure. And I went on the road with him across the whole US. Like we would stop in random, cities and states and just pull out, this massive set and plug it into this briefcase looking battery, but it was very janky. He had all these wires because it was a prototype. And so that was my introduction into the startup world, the music world, and I was just overwhelmed and fascinated by everything, and I enjoyed it because I could do everything that I wanted, which was dance, and then also meet so many different people because that was the reason why I left Africa in the first place. And then like growing up in a very strict family, the artistic part of me was not like nourished. It wasn't allowed to be explored. Dancing was like taboo in my family because my family just had this weird standard to themselves. Like you don't like put the family's name in a bad reputation. That was just too much pressure because of the family. Like there's songs about my last name, Sisay, in Gambia, so it's a very well-known last name because they came from a very like royal family before like royalty got like disbanded. But yeah, so there was a lot of pressure on me not doing XYZ when it comes to art. So the battery tour kind of opened my eye to that, and I'm just like, wow, people can actually do this. So I just went all in, and so finance became like eventually I didn't think much of it, but I became the CFO for the battery tour, where I was making sure that all the tips that we were getting was actually going towards making the product better, investing into hiring different like like managers to help us get into like record labels. So I was doing a lot of delegation and managing money while we were traveling, and this was us just setting up and having buckets and collecting cash. So every night we'll make close to like $1,000 in cash, until when we went to LA and realized that the competition is very fierce. There's so many guys that look like us that are all doing the same thing.
Right.
But then at the same time, I felt like I helped the company a lot because AY was a very big spender, and I made sure that everything was accounted for. So I was still somewhat like using my finance degree, because I became the CFO for the battery tour for a little bit. I think for like 3 years before I left. But yeah, so I did use my finance degree, just not for my dad, I guess.
Right.
I lived in Burbank for 6 months, and we like had a bunch of investors, but at that point we were all very young, so we were distracted by the music and having fun. So we lost all the opportunity with Capitol Records, because they wanted to, actually give us a record label, because they loved the idea that we were incorporating entrepreneurial into music because we had a product. So our value was even higher, even though music was very shitty. But so through that, we were able to, we like lost all the opportunity, and that's when I separated with the band, because we just learned that there was so much happening between us, because all of us were individual artists. We were not, we were never a band. At some point, I just learned that I was having meetings with like different, like producers, like studios, without telling us, feeling disappointed that we all left everything to come here, and to learn that, he was doing things just for himself, which was his goal to begin with. It just wasn't communicated properly, because we all left everything. I brought in 2 cars just so that we can tour. So yeah, I ended up just like leaving everything, and that's when I became homeless for a little bit, and I stayed in my car, and I would just dance in the street corner just to have money to eat and money to, come back to, just raise money to come back to KC. But that's when I picked up marketing, because back with the battery tour, I had to manage a bunch of marketers, a bunch of advertisers, like a bunch of managers that we were hiring to help us be seen. So I learned a lot from them, and I started freelancing in my car. I remember I'll go to Starbucks and they'll kick me out. I'll go to Chipotle and then they'll also ask me to leave, and I would just sit there just to get free Wi-Fi and then find clients. And, one thing led to another. I ended up having a few clients, and I had enough to come back to Kansas City. But yeah, it was very rough.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like you did a lot of this whilst finishing your degree. If you go back to your, if I'm pronouncing it right, Alcamba company and the creative solutions and the production, seems like you were doing a lot of this in tandem after the battery tour and while you were still in college. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, because like one of the problems with my dad was that I have to be in school, and that was how I could stay in the U.S. too, because I came here as a student, so I had a student visa, so I had to be in school, which was also a whole different stress. But there were a few semesters that I left and just like, all right, I'm gonna go do this, and then I'll get the call from like the immigration. Hey, you need to be in status.
Right.
Your status is getting, and back then I wasn't educated on that too.
Right.
So I was very close to getting like losing my status and just being undocumented, which was scary. Because again, we just come here and no one like educates us on the status and all of the crazy laws that comes with immigration. I had to be in school and enroll in full credit hours, and also do all of these crazy endeavors that I was doing. So yes, I was running Alcamba Creative Solution while going to school. And then Alcamba Creative Solution got like, we started getting a lot of clients. But one day I just made a tweet, because I remember I was in my car just being very down, and I just made a tweet, just a very sad tweet. And then somehow I was on Twitter, and then I saw a guy named Gary Vee, and he was just like yelling, like, get out of the couch and get out of your feelings and go do go do shit. I was like, who the heck is this guy yelling? And somehow I just kept watching his content, But then one day, I don't know, he said something that just like appealed to me, and then I had some motivation to actually just go and do things. And I remember I started going to Target, and I'll buy a bunch of things on Target, like sell them on eBay and just add like $5 extra price. I'll find like rare items on Target, and then because I'll go to eBay and look at things, and see how much they cost on eBay, whether there's a demand for it, and I'll go to Target, buy them, or I'll just go to Facebook Marketplace and buy them and then flip them on eBay. And that's how I kind of started, like, like the flipping things, just to get extra money. But eventually I started building the agency, and I came back to Kansas City just to get some stability, because Burbank was very expensive. Even making money with clients, I was literally doing like distribution for Marvel. I still could not afford to like get a place, which was crazy. But then I came back to Kansas City just to be stable, and then I got a place here, and that's when I started actually seeing growth, and I started getting bigger, even more bigger clients like Yobi's, like this massive kids brand, 7 figures, and I was managing almost $600,000 of their marketing dollars, and through that I was able to build a team. And then I saw that a lot of customers were asking for video. And then I was like, okay, well, let me create a sister company. So Alcamba Production was created. But while I was creating Alcamba Production, that's when the Freedom Project also got developed, because all of that, you know, things were happening. I was also having a lot of personal problem. My mom started getting sick with a kidney disease. My girlfriend at the time decided to leave because, I was living in my car, which is not her fault. She was even in the car with me, but I was just too depressed and down that I could not get myself out. If she didn't leave, I would have just kind of destroy whatever she has going on. But she kind of gave me like an ultimatum and told me, if I don't do something, get help, she's leaving. And I'm just like, yeah, right. She's not going to leave. I'm Zeus, the drummer, the dancer, the marketer, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But then she left, and that's when I went to go seek therapy. And so all of these things were happening, but on a personal, I had so much pressure, was seeing a therapist that kind of helped me balance all of this and understand how to navigate. The business life was crumbling, the personal life was crumbling, but somehow therapy helped me, just had a very solid mindset. And through that, I was able to build the Alcamba Creative Solution and Production to almost 60 team members. It was crazy.
Wow.
Like we grew so fast. And I remember just making a tweet again, just saying, "Hey, Gary Vee, thank you so much for yelling at me when I was down. And now I've built an agency that I've done almost $35 million in sale." And then he just responded to it, "Wow, I'm proud of you." And that tweet went crazy. And I even got more clients from that tweet.
Oh, wow.
So I started growing up so fast. But with like, with growth comes responsibility. And I wasn't responsible enough to manage a team of 60, to have these massive clients with so much money. And so I didn't have a good culture in my office. I remember people would just show up at the office whenever they want. And then we would just sit there, and then I was like, I don't know, like, just run the ads, like,
Right.
I don't care what time you come in. So there was not any culture whatsoever in that office building, and it was just like chaotic. People were showing up. I remember one time one of my employees brought an edible, and we all ate an edible and got high. just like we were just like laughing, to a point that the building owners, we got reported that we were being destructive, because we were like Wolf of Wall Street. I swear,
Oh my
it
goodness.
was insane,
Wow.
because I came from like living in my car to like building this massive company very fast, and doing like crazy numbers. But then I made a huge mistake, because with that culture, when there is no rules, or there is no policy, there is nothing, a few of my team members actually started seeing each other while one of the person is married. And then one of our clients slash investor also was seeing one of my team members, and I knew about all of this, but then I didn't know how to approach it, because I'm just like, it's not happening in the office, it's not my business, like, they're all adults, please don't bring this here. So with that was the worst decision. So a lot of the team members started losing trust in me as a leader, and then also started like questioning everything that I was doing, and which I was like, why are they questioning, like, and why is everyone telling me to tell these adults to stop doing what they're doing? They're adults, they can take care of their own life. Which was a very hard lesson to like learn, realizing that, I actually have to step up as a leader and be like, putting policies and making sure that people are not just doing whatever they want. So all of it is to say that, I definitely did not do what my dad wanted me to do, which is come back and work for him as an accountant. I just
Right.
found myself in all different pockets, and therapy basically helped me put all of that together, all of that, talent into perspective, which is the Freedom Project. From like coming from this Wolf of Wall Street mindset and being held very chaotic with my energy, with the people that trust me with their life and kids to work for me, and me just breaking that trust. So it was a hard lesson, and it took me probably 3 years just to get out of that funk. So I went back from sleeping in my car to building this massive company to go back to selling my house, downsizing into an apartment. I default on that apartment. I was on the verge of eviction. And then actually leaving the property because I remember when I got served again, I was shaking, my whole body was trembling because I'm like I'm in this position again, like how can someone f up so bad? Like, it was just bizarre. I just keep making the same mistake over and over again. Things started changing at the end of like 2022, which is it came from a place of tragedy. Like one of my closest friend, James, he was shot and killed in Kansas City here. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to go all in into Freedom Project. So I actually walked away from Alcamba Production and the Alcamba Creative Solution. I have other people managing that I know they can do better than me. And so I just went all in on the Freedom Project, and I can go more on the Freedom Project if
Yeah,
you want.
let's pause there, and obviously we're going to talk more about the Freedom Project because there's so many things to unpack. So, I mean, one phenomenal that Gary V is reached out to you. So, I'm a long suffering Jets fan. So a lot of people in Kansas City
Oh
say
man,
you're the only Jets fan I know.
right.
But Gary
Bless your
V is
heart.
the most well recognized Jet fan because he keeps saying he's going to buy the Jets. Is when he immigrated here, and he was 10 years old. His mom got him a Jet jersey, and I forget what player, but yeah, that's incredible that he would even help you. Do you stay in touch with Gary?
No, like that was just one time. He just
Random, yeah,
responded to it, and
yeah,
then for a couple weeks, he was kind of like liking my stuff, whatever I put out. Because
yeah,
at some point, people started like, "Hey, I saw that Gary V like responded to your tweet. Do you
yeah,
have any advice?" And I was like, "Who the heck are all these people?"
right,
People started asking me for advice because for some reason they're like, "Oh, Gary V, like talk to this guy. He must be someone."
yeah,
But then eventually at the end of those couple of weeks, he actually followed me. And I remember I had like 10 like followers on Twitter, and he went to like, I think 400, like literally overnight,
right,
just because he said Gary Vee follows you. And I'm saying, oh, okay, well, thank you for this. Now I feel like I
yeah,
know 400 people that I'll never meet.
yeah. No, I love
And yeah, so that definitely brought a lot of business, in my way. Even right now, we have an event happening in May, and I'm hoping that I can have him speak there because I'm just like I try to credit all of this from him. His annoying video of yelling at me. It was so annoying. I
right.
remember being so taken aback because I've never heard like a professional CEO yelling and cursing at people, and I
I
was like,
know he's so
who the heck
great
is this
online. I
douche?
mean,
Yeah,
he's authentic as they come, I think,
right.
and
Yeah,
he
he was
wants to
very
do
wrong.
and he wants to do good. I mean, he wants to help people, and you know, um, the other thing, and a lot of my guests, we talk about therapy, and I'm like, like there's not many people that don't need therapy. Having gone through it myself, and just I always say, everybody has their baggage. It's just how big is the suitcase, right? I mean, but yeah, and then the other interesting part, I mean, you were so young and you really had no role modeling of I'm going to say a real company, growing up outside of your dad's, I guess, but you were young, right? And you're focused on soccer, not really focused on the business, I guess. But yeah, so like you were almost afraid, it seems like, to build a culture because you didn't like, oh, I'm responsible for the culture because I'm the CEO. I need so you launched the Freedom Project. Let's talk about that and what because I love I think you define it as a multicultural impact creative agency, and you have all these different with e-learning and entertainment and the event. Talk about that and the learnings from the previous companies. How did it help you become a better CEO?
Yeah, so like one of the things that I've learned very quickly, it's like, especially growing that fast and not having to your point and zero role model, like a role model, or because I've never seen a CEO looks like. Even my company, the startup that I was a part of, was a music startup, and the structure we had was drive to another city or state, set up, perform, and make money, and go to the next one, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll bump into some random investors.
Yeah, and
who's
gummies
walking
was
by.
totally acceptable as part of that culture.
No, absolutely. So it was just like that was no like role model. So my role model, I guess, was like AY, my co-founder of the Battery Tour back then. And then we had another founder, a co-founder as well. It was three of us, and we had a team of 6 people. So we were traveling across. So we had 3 cars lined up, just driving across the city. But the Freedom Project now, even the Freedom Project, when I first started, it was supposed to be a side project because I had other jobs to do. But when my friend, passed away, that's when I decided to do it full time. I was like, all right, let's go all in. But I went in with being very intentional. And I told myself, okay, I'm not going to hire anyone until I know what I'm doing, what the company is, like what exactly are the values, what are the missions that I'm hoping to push. So if you look at the history of the Freedom Project, you see there was so many different things. I used to have people wearing T-Rex costumes walking around the city to talk about, like suicide awareness. I did something called the listening series. I did something. I didn't have a name for it, but it was just basically me just popping up places, giving away free boxes, mental health starter kits. That was just me experimenting. So I told myself, I'm not going to hire anyone until I know what I'm doing. What is this company like? What's the goal? Like, who am I trying to reach? Who are the customers? Is there even customers? Should this be a nonprofit? Should it be a for-profit company? And I knew that I never want to run a nonprofit, but I knew that, in my background as an advertiser, I do understand that sometimes we have an idea and we just go and create without doing market research. And as an advertiser, the way that we figure out whether even a product is sellable, just put it out and let people let us know whether they think this product is worth selling. So we read a lot of comments, we make sure that people are actually interested in that idea before we put it out. So that could be in the form of collecting, like an email list, building a list, just making sure that we have a date for when we are going to release this product, and that from day one all the way before we release, we would do a bunch of things to make sure that people are interested. So that could be activations like, doing a funny video and then putting it out and then seeing whether people are commenting. And based off of the comment, this, gray product might end up becoming red, because people may start saying, oh, I like this. I wish the handle was not this way. I wish the handle was that way. So we would use all that feedback and then apply it to the product before we even launch. And then when we launch, we are literally launching something that people want.
The podcast today is brought to you by Connect 5000, a Kansas City-based lead generation firm. If you're having top of the sales funnel challenges or are struggling to get into the door of targeted companies, go to www.connect5000.com and download our free ebook. In the last 14 years, we've helped countless software, technology, and consulting companies boost sales revenue with effective lead generation campaigns, sales prospecting strategies, and inside sales management. That's www.connect5000.com.
And then another example that I enjoy doing, and I think I'm not supposed to say this, but I think it's been too long, but I worked on Marvel and this massive project, like the budget for the impression campaign was insane. Like I've never seen too many zeros in my life, but basically we were supposed to find what the average kid looks like in the US. So we ran a bunch of campaign where we would have people trying to see what their babies would look like. So imagine millions of people across the US are putting out pictures of themselves and their partner and then seeing what their baby look like. So we take all that data because we're like, okay, well, now the average baby is light skin with an afro, or light skin with a curly hair, or a white kid with blonde hair. Let's make sure that we are pushing this superhero. Let's push Thor. Let's put Loki. Let's create a whole new superhero.
Wow.
And then we make sure that kids are growing up with those superheroes. So the market research happens with the customer, and then we create the final product when we eventually launch. Yeah, so I try to apply that in my process with the Freedom Project. That's why I would tell people that telling me, why is this not a nonprofit? Because I don't know anything about nonprofit, but I worked in distribution, and most of the time I was the youngest person in the room. But then when I speak, they're like, "Oh, that's a good perspective." Maybe that's because I've lived so many different lives.
Right.
I've been in music, all these different walks of life, and I've always been a really good listener. So I apply that with the Freedom Project now with advocacy. The goal is to use creative in order to talk about mental health. Because in film, also when I worked in film, when we spend $1 in producing the film, we'll spend $2 to make sure people see it. So with me right now, I was like, okay, mental health when it comes to advocacy, they're just depending on the fundraising, and they'll do the whole advocacy, and eventually they get to the fundraising, do this massive event. So no one knows about who this nonprofit is. No one knows what they're doing. So when it comes to the second cycle of fundraising, they can't even raise funds when they've just raised $1 million, because people are like just throwing them money. They're like, well, they're not doing anything. Why should I give them money again? So me now, I do the Freedom Project differently. So I'm launching a product on May 6th called forum.com right now. Joinforum.com. I build an entire conference around the name Forum, just to like make sure that, when people hear mental health, they hear Forum. And it's a national campaign, which is designed to actually acknowledge the people doing the work. So the therapists, the mental health care providers, the thought leaders within this space, and also the advocates that are, not, they're not doctors, but they have massive, like audience across the US, but they're always talking about mental health. So Forum now, it's becoming a conference, which is me testing the concept, because I've done different versions of it, where some of them were film premieres, some of them were discussions. For the past 4 years, I've been testing it, because I know that idea is so expensive, and it's just in my head, but I don't know whether people actually need it. But it came from me going to therapy and learning that it was so hard to find a therapist. And I spoke to so many different therapists, and none of them knew anything about my past, because I have a very complex past. So it's really hard to relate to me. And I know there were other people that are experiencing that, because when I put out a video talking about it, that video had like 4,000 plays in within an hour, and the comments were insane. Again, through the comments, and I saw people saying, "Oh man, I had the same problem. I wish there was a solution where I can just go to a therapist, and the therapist has the same interests as me, so that we don't have to just try to figure out how to get along." Some people feel judged when they talk to a therapist, because the therapist cannot relate to all the trauma that they went through. So they can see the little, like eyebrows going up with the therapist, because therapy is getting traumatized in real time. Like, how are you alive? Because I've experienced that when I told my story to the therapist, and she was like, "Oh my God, how is this guy okay?" So it's like things like that is what I'm including into the Freedom Project. And it took me like almost 6 years to figure out what that is. And now, which became to the Build Better series, and then the Forum Nexus, which is a 5-day conference. It went from 7 different projects to now 2 solid projects.
Right.
Even though I love the other 5s, because they were fun, but they were so expensive. Sometimes people don't even show up on time. So it was not organized. So I was testing that for the past 4 years, and eventually I found 2 solid activities within the Freedom Project. And now I'm just like, cool, time to build a team. So now Brad came in. I've been contracting Angela Kennedy. I'm hoping that she would take over Freedom Project, because when I look at her, I was like, this is the leader for Freedom Project. I am not, I'm too over the place and very chaotic sometimes. So the project needed my chaotic energy and my braveness to bring it to where it needs to be. Now it needs someone logical, someone who has that stable brain and has that operational brain to actually scale it. So I'm hoping Freedom Project will eventually become, like Angela's baby, and then I can move to Forum.
Yeah, I want to get back to the event too in May, but I want to make sure we go back, because you mentioned Marvel, and it's interesting how Marvel, the whole that process, it was very similar to how Netflix evolved as a company, because they were selling other people's content, and it was the very long tail where you can get sci-fi movies made by female directors in Croatia, right? You can do that search and find something. But what they had was developing algorithms like what people want to watch, and then they develop their own content to make the money.
Right.
And that's where Netflix is now. So that's Marvel used very similar,
Mhm.
but the question is, you had really some iconic brands that you were working with, Marvel and Shake Shack,
Oh, yeah.
Danny Meyer's company, or one of his restaurants and his hospitality group. That one, did you ever meet Danny Meyer, and then two, how did you get those iconic brands to work with you?
No, yeah, like especially with like Shake Shack, when they're first opening Kansas City, apparently like one of their top managers has been a fan of Freedom Project, and I spoke to one of their managers, like the middle managers at that location. I just walked in there one day, and I told him, "Hey, look, I am trying to have a partnership with you guys because I love the burger, number one, and I love the community that you build here, number two. Who do I need to talk to?" And then he's like, "Oh, I know the right person you can talk to." But at the same time, I've been on Twitter tweeting nonstop at Shake Shack. I was tweeting the right person because I knew who the right person was anyway. But I decided instead of asking him directly, I decided to go, the chain and slowly build that because they see me. I wear a fedora wherever, I'm not easy to, like people don't easily forget me. And I would show up as a customer and I'll buy. And then I did that a few times. Eventually, I built a relationship with the manager. When I show up, he said, "Hey, what's up, Abraham?" And I'm saying, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm saying, "Hey, by the way, I work in mental health and I have an event coming up. I would love to have Shake Shack be part of this. I currently have a few athletes that I can bring into the partnership. Who do I need to talk to?" And he's like, "Cool, talk to this guy." And then he just sent us an email, CC'd us, and it turned into a partnership where they had like 2 days where anyone who bought a burger and you mentioned Freedom Project, everything comes back to us, which was crazy. And then for like almost 3 months, they would just deliver burgers at the office back when I had the team of 62.
Oh, wow.
So they would just
That's
come and
nice.
deliver, you just give us burgers. And I was like, this is amazing. We get free food. But like I'm very old school with how I approach partnerships. I just show up to places. I did that J Don. I went directly walked in, and I think my fedora does something. I'm not saying go and buy a fedora, but me just walking in, and when people are not expecting it, and I still do this today. I just walk up to places and just say, "Hey, I'm Abraham." Who the heck is Abraham? Oh, I'm the founder of Freedom Project. What is Freedom Project? Who is this guy?
Right,
And,
right,
and I'm gonna say, hey, I'm here to see Bob, or I just did that at KU Health System because even though they're my client, I want to get a bigger account with them, and I want to meet Bob, the actual decision maker. I had a brief like interaction with him, and I just told him, hey, Bob, how much does it cost you to like not have a nurse available? And he was like, who the heck is this guy?
right,
And then he said, I think around like 10,000, which is crazy because a lot of good CEOs know their numbers.
right.
And then I'm gonna say, okay, well, I told him I want to help you guys fix that problem. Mind you, he has no idea who I am. And he was like, who are you again? I'm gonna say, oh, I'm with Dustin Colquitt because Dustin was the one who was doing business development for me. He's the former Kansas City Chiefs kicker.
Oh,
And
right.
then I made sure that he remembered the name Abraham, the Fedora, Freedom Project, Dustin Colquitt. And when I sent him a proposal, he got accepted immediately. And now I'm trying to meet with him, but it's been almost 3 months. So I just showed up at the hospital again. Hey, I'm here to see Bob. They're like, he's not here. And I'm saying, tell Bob Abraham said he'll be back next week. So I got an email from someone from his team saying that, hey, Bob said to just send times, and then we'll see when we can fit you in his schedule. He's currently like moving from different locations a lot. So I still do that. I just show up at places. I'm not saying it's recommended, but it works for me. Maybe
Yeah,
it might not work for everyone. I have that personality,
yeah, I love that.
and yeah, I've always been in a crowd in front of people, like on stages. So I've always had the, yeah, I guess, the confidence to just walk up to places, and I think I'm performing in my head, like, hey, what's up? I'm Abraham.
Yeah.
Because back then our opening was, "What's up? We're the battery throw," and he would say, "I'm AY Music," and I'm saying, "I'm Zeus," and he was, "I'm Christian Robinson," and we're the battery thrower. So we do we do that as an opening. So I still like, I guess I'm still performing, at the end
Yeah,
of
no, of course.
the.
So it's funny you say with the fedora. So I just had ex-mayor Sly James on the podcast, and his trademark attire was a bow tie. He went everywhere with a bow tie, every day, even Saturday, Sunday, because that was his. I said, why the bow tie? He goes, he went to some leadership conference because he's a lifelong learner. And they said, you need something to identify you, especially as a public figure. And the funny part about it is, he won, he was a 2-term mayor, that's the term limit here in Kansas City. And he, the second term he won with 87% of the vote, which is incredible. But he goes, I would run into people after I was mayor and I stopped wearing the bow tie, and they would see me at a grocery store and they say, you look so familiar, but I don't know who you are. But if he had the bow tie on, they knew exactly who he was, and he would get questions. He told me at the grocery store. So I think, that is amazing that because it does help to have a brand. So let's go back to the event, though. So why the name Forum, and it's spelled FOORUM, I believe. What's the significance of the name and the spelling?
Yeah, so like one of the things that I've noticed just throughout the of me running the Freedom Project, it's like I've always been chasing like conversations and also connections. So figured, I literally went to Google and it said like, what's a word that can encapsulate for a conversation? And it was like forum, which was FORUM. And I'm saying, oh, okay, I like that. And then I said, what's a word that can, that means connection? And it was like nexus. And I was like, yeah, that's actually perfect. Forum Nexus. And I remember I went to buy the domain name and I saw the forum with one all was like out of this world, like almost $20,000 for the domain.
Okay.
And then I saw that forum.com also was like, I think $19,000. Some guy in Denmark owns it and he's like not letting it go.
Right.
Except I give him 19,000. And then I was like, I'm just going to add 2 O's and just make it forumnexus.com. So Forum Nexus became, a name that I can afford with 2 O's.
Yeah, I love it.
Because the 1 O was just too expensive. And the World Economic Forum, I think they own forum.com. It just redirects to their website.
Okay.
And yeah, so and anything with 2 O's has been historically known to be very eye-catching because we as humans psychologically we have 2 eyes, so we tend to gravitate to things with 2 O's.
Yeah, Google has done pretty well with that.
Right, exactly. And Google, massive companies like Facebook, Google, they've always had those 2 O's, so it creates that safety or that trust.
Right.
Like, oh, this company is probably something if you have 2 O's. Like it's all subconscious. So and like SEO, when it comes to search engine optimization, you're more likely to have your website rank higher because forum.com or forum nexus, you won't see it anywhere.
Right.
So I figured it's just friendly when it comes to SEO, and also the chance of it being more successful with that name and branding. We can have fun with it. I have a great, like graphic designer, and he's currently creating some amazing things. I can't wait for us to start posting, starting March 15 for all the content around Forum Nexus.
Yeah, so talk a little bit more about the event. So you talked about maybe Gary Vee will be there, but you do have a celebrity that's already involved. So tell the listeners about that.
Yeah, so Forum Nexus is a 5-day conference, and the way that it's designed is to acknowledge the people doing the work. So the healthcare workers, mental health care providers, thought leaders, and advocates. And the reason why I did that is because when I work with KU, I got to talk to a lot of nurses, and I've always been talking to psychologists. I know probably 500 plus psychologists at this point. And one of the things that they have in common is the fact that they're not acknowledged. They don't feel like they're respected, even though their job is so demanding and such an essential part of society, but they don't feel appreciated. And I also learned that the highest rate of suicide happens in healthcare. So I wanted to create something with my background as someone who worked in film and all these different avenues. I figured if I can create something similar to the Oscars, where we acknowledge these 4 different industries and then bring, have 36 categories, bring them in one room and then, celebrate the heck out of them and then spend the extra 3 days having businesses within those industries show up, set up their booths. And then we can have art, we can have music, but then have those, have people come in and get to interact that day. Just, the connection part of it. So Forum is the celebration and Nexus is the connection. So Forum is the award show and Nexus is the, conference. So since this is the second year, but this is the first year I'm doing it at a national scale, I decided, how can I make sure this is successful? Trevor Noah, cool. Trevor is very well known. People love him. He's a safe guy. He has a great personality, great conversationalist. So he's going to be moderating a conversation on during the award show. I wanted him to host, but then his team is like, well, this is a new event. We don't want him to put his reputation at that stake, because hosting is apparently now is very scary for a lot of people that host events, especially what happened with Joy Coy,
Right.
making fun of
Yes.
Taylor Swift and almost getting canceled literally in 24 hours.
Right.
So a lot of people are very, especially something new, like what the heck how are you celebrating people in the healthcare space? So
Yeah.
people
And
can
probably you couldn't
visualize
pay
it.
as much as the Grammys paid Trevor
Yeah,
Noah to
exactly.
host the
Oh
Grammys.
no, like I'm paying him more than the Grammy's paying him. They pay him because the Grammy has the massive audience, so
Right.
they
Yeah.
can
So
pick
that he
him.
gets
So
exposure. Right.
it's like an honor for him to do that. I think the Oscars or the Grammys paid him last year like $5,000. I'm not allowed to say how much I pay him, but it's a lot. You can
Okay.
buy a house with him. That's all I'm gonna
Oh,
say.
wow.
But yeah, so he's very pricey, but having him associating, we also got the support from the Office of the Surgeon General. I want him to bring all of his, generals that day off, but he's gonna do a keynote speaking. And I also, we're currently talking to Brené Brown, so we're hoping that she would be one of the speakers, but and then also Cloud, who is Gary Vee's chief heart officer. My goal is to maybe Gary Vee will tag along, but I doubt it. He's too busy.
Right.
But I would love for Cloud, because she is a chief heart officer. She's big on empathy. She has a book around, like just a safe workspace, and she's been the pioneer of making sure that Gary Vee's work environment is safe for people coming in.
What a great title, too. I mean, that just says a lot about Gary Vee and what he's trying to do with the company, because Brad Hill shared that that's actually the chief financial officer reports up through Claude, the chief heart officer. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah, she also has a finance background, which is crazy. She used to be an accountant.
Oh, wow. There
I
you
was
go.
like, yeah, from accounting to like empathy now. But yeah, so however, I have a roster of almost 30 people we are currently outreaching, but I want it to be a big deal. And all the people in the roster, especially the ones that are receiving an award, they, the way that we're going about it, we are finding the people with the national audience that are advocating nonstop, the doctors, the healthcare, workers, the mental health care providers that are very public, and they're talking about ways or like advocating for these, solutions, and always just being a champion for like human longevity. So we're bringing all of them. Just yesterday, I just talked to Visit KC to block like I think 50 plus rooms to do a room block. So we're gonna have them fly in and just make sure that they're taken care of while in Kansas City. But behind the scenes, as you know, Kansas City has been known for one of the most violent places currently. So I'm hoping with this event we can also work on narrative change.
Yeah.
It's a combination of a lot of things, on a local and a national. But this will be the biggest event I've ever put together. Usually I have 600 people. This one, our goal is to have 21,000 people throughout the 5 days. It's massive. I spoke to the city manager yesterday to like get the city involvement so that we can get police support, we can get all this different support to make sure that we can execute very, very the way that I see it in my head.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I'm very exhausted.
Yeah, that's great. You need to. I'm a big Tim Ferriss podcast fan. Been listening to his podcast since he launched 10 years ago in 2014. But he talks about a lot about mental health, his own as well as an advocate. So he'd be, if you can get Tim Ferriss, that'd be.
Oh yeah, he's on my list for sure. Him and like Simon Sinek and and kind of like a bunch of thought leaders in that category. So yeah, I'm just shooting my shot, because I'm like, hey, like I created a market space. Now let's get these guys to come in and these girls. So it's been an uphill battle for sure, but I've been planning it for 4 years. So I don't think people realize how my brain works. Of course they don't. That's not their business. But it's like, to me, this is already done. I'm already thinking about forums at this point in my head. So I'm just excited for it to just unfold so people actually get to see it.
Abraham, I'd love to help two different groups of people. One is the young professionals that are just getting out of college. They're going to start their professional journey. What advice do you have for them as they begin this journey, as well as get their first post-college job?
I always have like two different, like advice. I like to give an advice on a personal level because I felt like I didn't have any of that on a professional level. But on a personal level, one thing that I've learned, which I just shared on a conversation yesterday, which is, and I think you were on that conversation on LinkedIn. I'm not going to say who, but I always tell people that to make sure that they're not identifying with the struggles that are happening in their life. Because if I easily identify with me being homeless and all this sort of thing, I would have been stuck there and that wouldn't be any way for me to get out of there. So me understanding that, hey, this is just an experience right now. It's not who I am, but I'll figure out how to get out of this. So that's a very big mantra that I carry. Even right now with this event, I'm like, this is not my identity. I'm not Forum Nexus. This is just an experience, and it's a space for people to show up, collaborate, network, and connect, and and see what magic we can create. But it's not my personality. That's why I can safely say I want Angel to take over Freedom Project, run all this, and I can move on. And then on like a professional level, I think people just overthink, which is not their fault. It's a combination of their parents, the environment, giving them that pressure that you have to do this, you have to do that. And I think just jumping on the first opportunity that like presents itself and going in with the intention of, I'm going in to learn as much as possible. Because when you were young, I know I'm still young, I'm 32, but in your early 20s, I was just going into things just to learn and just to experience as much as possible. I didn't care about money. I mean, I lived in my car, so I'm not recommend that for anyone to do.
Right.
But to make sure that you were, not saying that I want to be an accountant. Like, you don't even know who you are. how just try different things and see what actually speaks to you. Because to me, I was supposed to study accounting. I did music management, I did advertising, I did all these different things, and nothing's actually spoke to me until I found the Freedom Project, which became a creative agency to advocate for mental health. But everything I did in my past, now it's happening in Freedom Project, but not in a chaotic way. It's happening in a very safe way, because all of those experiences are the reason why I am here today, to make sure that I can even take this on. So yeah, on a professional level, just not overthink it. Just do it. Just Nike. Or
Nike, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I love that advice in terms of the don't identify your job is not you. So and separating that, and I think that's probably interviewed over 70 people on the podcast, and I've never heard that advice, but I think it's really critical. And even at you having multiple jobs, and you're doing this major event, you don't even identify with that. It's just part of what you're doing, but it's not you. And I love that. What about, and you have some great experience from this perspective, being a young CEO, but as people get those that want to take over, leadership of others, so you're on the org chart and you're responsible for a team of people. When these young leaders begin their leadership journey in that way, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, just be honest, man. Like it's just as easy as that. Because especially because I was managing a very big team, and I wasn't really sure how to communicate with them. I didn't have a role model of what a leader looks like, so I didn't really know whether to be vulnerable with them. I didn't know what level of vulnerability I should have with them, and I wasn't communicating effectively. So I had all these people. Some of them are way older than me. They have kids. They trusted me, with their family, with their life, and I wasn't communicating. Like, for example, when something is happening within the company where I should just, bring in the executive team and let them know, hey, this is what's happening. What can we do? I'm like, no, I'll do this myself. They trust me. I'll get it done. So, which is a little bit like egotistical because of age and lack of experience, thinking that I should take on pretty much every challenge. But like having people around you is the reason why companies can scale, especially people that trust in you. Just a random young guy and decided to leave everything and come work for you. So yeah, I think just being honest, just being straight up with people, and not waste people's time. If you don't have the skill, don't say you do. I've hired a bunch of people, which were big mistakes. That would see me being a young guy, and they would just assume that they can buy me with all these crazy stories. I'm not going to say name, but I hired someone who kind of traumatized me, but he said all these things. He exited a company. He was 27, once I was 21. uh, just these bizarre stories. And
Right.
back then I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. I'll hire. I don't need a background check. I just hired him on the spot.
Right.
And turns out, the project that he said he sold was just a made up project when he was with the Boys and Girls Club. And I was like, what are you doing? So just being honest is a big part.
Yeah.
If you're going into a new role, don't make things up, because at the end of the day, people are going to find out anyway. So is right up to just go in, just being straight up. Hey, I don't know this, but I'm ready to learn, and I have the energy for it, and I think I have the leadership, like the leadership skill for it, but I need to learn XYZ skill. And if you don't know what to learn, just find someone that you trust, and just be straight up with them and be like, hey, I see that you were doing this. I want to learn that. Do you have space to just let me tag along? Because I did that. I used to tag along on a bunch of CEOs in Kansas City. I just had a meeting with Peter Maluk. He was like one of the most richest, like asset managers in the US right now. But I've been messaging him nonstop, like, hey, like I want to learn from you. I love what you're doing. I have a finance background, but and I want to be in the future where you are right now. What do I need to do? And it took me probably a year of just messaging him, but eventually he, took a 15-minute meeting with me.
Wow.
Told me to keep updating him. So I've been doing that randomly. I don't care whether he says, because I don't identify with the things I do when it comes to professional.
Yeah.
But so I think I have that space to just take a no, and not, sure, no today. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Love it.
Maybe today you had a bad day, you were hungry. I don't know. So I will call you in 2 weeks again and try. So I've been doing that with him. Right now, I've been sending him constant update. Anything new happen, I'll send him a text. I have probably 6 different people in Kansas City that if you like look at our conversation, it looks like I'm just an angry girlfriend or an angry spouse that's just like, how dare you? It's just long chain. And every now and then they'll just give me the thumbs up and they say, good job. And I'm just like, thank you. I'll let you know when there's anything new. You don't have to say anything. Just know that Abraham will continue updating you, because I want to be at that place.
Yeah.
And they don't owe me a response, but I want to learn from them, and whether they give me the time or not.
Yeah. For those who don't know Peter Maluk, who's also been on the Tim Ferriss Show podcast, he's the founder and CEO, chairman of Creative Planning, which is one of the big wealth management national firms. So
I just need to get Tim Ferriss to show up for Peter to sponsor.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for that.
So
next
Peter
Tim
connects
Ferriss,
with Tim. Yeah.
Yep.
Who, Peter and Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins have co-wrote a book together. So there you go. You got plenty. You get Tony on.
No, I have some angles to go now.
How can listeners help the Freedom Project? What can they do?
Right now, we're like taking on sponsors and like exhibitors for the conference. So which is happening in May, so the first week of May, and so when you go to Forum Nexus, so FORUMNEXUS.com, there should be a sponsor button or like an exhibitor button, but it's designed for businesses that are within those industries. So healthcare, mental health care, health tech, that are interested in just being in a space where they can participate and host almost 20,000 people coming in. So so that's currently what we are focusing on. And then we have our quarterly events. We wish our night at the museum. We have one happening on March 1st at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. And it's designed to just bring people in a fancy space, because that's just my way. I like to have people dress up, show up, because my grandma will always remind me to dress up. That's why I always like wear suits and fedora. I don't care what time it is. And it could be, I'll always be suited and wear a fedora when I have things like that.
Yeah, I love it.
Just have people show up and be able to learn about the Freedom Project, hear from a panel. So this March 1st, we have a very incredible panel. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, so those events happen on a quarterly basis. So Build Better series and Forum Nexus happens once a year. So yeah, those are currently the 2 projects. And I'm hoping I can step away from Freedom Project after this year and just be the president and then focus on something else.
Yeah.
Which is Forum. But yeah.
Well, Abraham, I love what you're doing with the Freedom Project. Excited to see where you take it. And I love your title, Chief Empathy Officer. What a great title. So thank you for being on the Corporate Couch today.
No, me too. Thank you very much.
What a fascinating story with Abraham and his life journey slash career journey. I think he is the first guest since Harry Campbell that also was a break dancer. Uh, but being a break dancer in LA and living out of his car, he was homeless. I mean, that's a incredible.
He set the standard
story.
for a lot of our guests like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, immigrated from Africa, Gambia, I believe. Yeah, I mean, just various career experience working with brands like Marvel as kind of the CMO and fractional CMO roles that he was doing and producing and music and I mean it's just a plethora of experiences. I love when he was talking about well, one other thing about his growing up, they lived in a one room, well, not one room, one house, and his grandfather had three wives, and he said 50 plus kids.
Yeah.
He stopped counting after 50.
That's a bunch of aunts and uncles and cousins.
Yeah, aunties.
Aunties.
But yeah, I mean, that obviously first guess with a grandfather with three wives and 50 plus kids. So that was interesting. But yeah, just running companies at a young age, like he literally talked about, the one company had no culture and they were doing gummies, during the day. And, as Jonathan Jones of Demdego says, they had a culture. It sucked.
Yeah.
But, he put no emphasis. He didn't even know what to do about it. But, the other thing I took away with it from the episode was the pandemic accelerated the focus on mental health in the workplace. So, but I mean, that a lot of the focus, just because it's, the law of large numbers, the focus is on the employees, the workers. But I mean, like the CEOs have the same problems. Like he talked transparently about his, therapy and PTSD. I mean, it's just an interesting, and like many of our guests have brought up, their own challenges and battles with mental health. So I just thought it was interesting all around. It's going to be exciting to see what the Freedom Project does for the mental health space.
He has done a lot of living, and did he say he was 32 years old?
Yeah, 32.
He has done more living in those 32 years than I've done in 3 or 4 of my lifetimes. It's just been amazing. We could go all sorts of different directions. So he started this Forum Nexus, but he had to misspell the word forum because he couldn't afford to buy it. So he spells it with 2 O's, and then he goes off on this big deal about how interesting it is of websites with 2 O's in them. I mentioned Google. I thought of a couple others. Yahoo is another one that has 2 O's and is benefiting as a result of having kind of a quirky name in the website. Hooters is another one that has 2 O's.
I'm glad you keep abreast of those company names.
I do. And Jeff, those are eyes. The 2 O's, they're the owl's eyes.
Oh, okay.
That's what they are.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's what those O's. I know that for a fact. So it's just an extremely interesting individual, and he's definitely passionate about not just mental health, but whatever it is. I think that if he was going to, do something with butterbrickle ice cream or something, or Neapolitan ice cream or something like that, he'd be passionate about it, and
Right.
He'd make a website, and he'd build a staff, and they would have seminars, and they would do all this other stuff. Just an amazing and varied person. He's just been all over the map. I thought it was an extremely interesting interview.
Yeah, and I thought the other two things. One, I love his title at Freedom Project, Chief Empathy.
Empathy,
Officer.
yeah.
Love
Isn't that great?
that.
Isn't that
And
great?
like Sly James, so Sly, when he was the mayor for 8 years for Kansas City, wore bow tie everywhere on Saturdays and Sundays, and that was his kind of brand when he was the mayor. And Abraham wears a fedora. So it's just very interesting. So he gets that recognition because he's always publicly facing.
He would always find a something. Steve Jobs did that with his black T-shirts, or his black not T-shirts, turtlenecks, right? And just find something that sets him apart and says, "This is what I am. This is how I'm identifying myself." It was great.
Yeah. What would you like to say to our great listeners today and for their leadership skills?
Well, we're going to go to that great philosopher named Jack Handey again. And Jack one time said this. He said, "As the light changed from red to green to yellow and back to red again, I sat there thinking about life. Was it nothing more than just a bunch of honking and yelling? Because it sure seems that way."
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.